Gupta. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Open Ecosystem Team at Intel. You can find us all about us at open.intel.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at open at Intel or X. And then we have a wonderful podcast where we push out podcast episodes very regularly and we have a healthy pipeline. Again, open.intel.com/podcast. And if you want to be on the podcast, talk to us. Today, this is going to be the last episode of the year. We're about getting into the holiday season, and I'm really excited and privileged to bring my longtime friend and spring extraordinaire, Josh, on the show. Hey, Josh.
Hi, buddy. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Do you want to introduce yourself for the
Oh
five
yeah.
people in the world who doesn't know you?
Okay. Well, my name is Josh Long. I work on the Spring team as a developer advocate. In the very much in the style of Arun has in the many decades he's done this kind of thing, and I am very very happy to be here.
Awesome.
I'm at Broadcom, by the way, where I'm technically at a competitor. That's a new thing, a new
Which is
development.
all right, and this is open source is a common thread that ties us together. That's the nature of open source. The
Yep.
companies that are competing in different areas, we create like a equitable playground so that it's a fair play as opposed to a vendor lock-in.
Yep. I'm with you. Go Spring and go. The other thing is we're both Java champions, so there's
We're both Java champions,
a
so
layer there. I am because of
absolutely.
you, by the way. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah, no, Java is something very close and dear to my heart, and I've always stayed close for over 20 years, just like
yeah,
you. So this is
you,
an exciting topic. The topic today is AI is the craze. So the topic
it is.
today is enabling LLMs in cloud native Java. All right, Josh, take it. Tell us what that journey looks like. What does
Yeah.
LLMs mean? How do you enable that? What does that flow look like?
Well, so Arun, like right now, there's a really interesting. I'm in San Francisco. You're in the South Bay, right? In South out my window there's the downtown area, and I'm telling you, there's more foot traffic since the pandemic, right? The pandemic, we saw a depression in foot traffic, and it's gone up. And a big part of that, of course, is just AI. Since last year, since November of 2022, ChatGPT burst onto the scene, revealing to the world at large that there was this like AI capability that the scientists had already created and that was out there and capable of doing these things. People just didn't know. And that has since sparked a revolution, right? There's more jobs, more buildings are filling up because of AI. Silicon Valley and San Francisco are now are being reborn in the fires of AI, right? And so it's everywhere and it's hype. And then we hear people talking about how they create these AIs. They talk about using PyTorch and NumPy and all these like Python libraries. And that's true. A lot of that stuff is implemented in C and in Python for the actual implementation of the thing itself. But what we care about, you and me and the rest of the world writ large, is not building our own LLM. There's not a lot of value in building your own LLM. Better to repurpose somebody else in the same way that there's not a lot of value for most companies to build their own web server or database or whatever. Instead, we care about integrating it into our business apps, right? And how do we make it so that we can talk to it? And from there is I can't think of a better language and a better place than Java, right? Java is the richest ecosystem. It was already the richest ecosystem. And now it plays really well with these LLMs. And remember, a lot of them have as their primary interface strings. So it's not like it's particularly difficult to get in that game. You just need to know how to do it. But there is a pipeline, right? There's a huge pipeline. And there's a graph. I saw, I think it was Andreessen Horowitz, I think, had a graph. And it's basically, think about your average use of AI these days. Well, in effect, it means talking to an LLM. And if that's all you're doing, hey, you're already ahead, right? That's a pretty interesting use case. And if because it's already got a lot of knowledge. But really, the most interesting thing, the most sort of the area of most interest right now for us and for a lot of people is RAG, right? The pattern retrieval augmented generation. Oh, hey, it's my buddy Deshaun. There we go. It's retrieval augmented generation. And that's the idea that I stuff information into the request so as to give it context to inform the response that I get back. Okay. And the question then, of course, is, well, okay, how do I get information into that request? There's a pipeline, right? Like if I've got a LLM, one of the dimensions of these LLMs that you have to think about: is it open? Is it closed? Is it hosted? Is it on, can run on-prem, etc. Is also context. How large a request can you make, right? How many things can you give it before you ask it a question? And that context, the more the higher, more dimensionality in the model, the more you can send it to incorporate into its answer. And so then the question comes, okay, well, let's say I've decided I want to do this model, and now I've got all this data, and it's going to definitely exceed that. Well, now you get into all sorts of things. You have this whole pipeline, and we're not going to have nearly enough time to get into all that, but you need support for summarizing it. You need support for chaining these things together and then feeding that into some place where we can then ask questions and then use that to incorporate it into the response. A natural place for that kind of, there's a pipeline, and there's also things you need to use to integrate, to store that data in a useful way. Vector databases seem to be the very natural fit here. So you store things in a vector database and then read from it and then send that in the response. So we're going to talk about some of that workflow here, but there's a whole life cycle of data, right? And that's really, you could spend a whole career just on that side of like cultivating the workflow from raw data into incorporated data that you can then send into this AI to get a response. So today we're going to look at Spring Boot's support for AI. It's a project called Spring AI. It is new, so it's not GA. What you're seeing here today may very well change. It might even change during our demo, which is why I did a Maven update package.
Give me a pause here. What you're talking about is LLM in that sense is just another technology. Like, database gets introduced, you got to enable that database in your existing business application.
Right.
You don't rewrite your business app. If Java is the richest ecosystem, we both are biased, but it is a fact also. But, right. So as you are writing your apps in Java, you just want to leverage that power of LLM. And if you're using cloud native Java, then most likely you're writing using Spring Boot. How do you integrate your new LLM logic into your app is what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. And there's the blessings of a great open source community. We have Spring AI, but we're not the only thing in the community. So there's obviously LangChain for J. There's some really good options out there. I think we've made a lot of great progress, and our integration is going to be, I think, it's already very useful, and it's getting more and more useful by the minute. It's a very active open source Git repository. And by the by, if you have a thing you want to see done in that world, hey, come knock on our GitHub issues. We want to help, and we want you to help.
Absolutely. Well, and something that you talked about, you're in San Francisco, you're looking out, more people, more traffic. This morning, I was listening to Hard Fork podcast, which is a New York Times podcast, and they were talking about effective accelerationism. This is the latest Silicon Valley subculture. And these are the people who are saying that, hey, AI is doing the right things, and we should accelerate the culture of bringing it in. And they were talking about, one of the hosts was talking about how he was in short, it's called as EAC, effective accelerationism.
Yeah.
And he was at an EAC party, essentially, and where they were talking about, and there are multiple subcultures going on. So I think the phenomena is just massive and is evolving quite rapidly. But for us, we're going to keep focused on Spring AI and how we can enable those LLMs in our cloud native.
I agree, but that thing you just mentioned, the accelerated accelerationism, EXAC, whatever. That
I had a tough time pronouncing it too.
That thing you just described, I thought I heard rumors, that was part of the tension behind the Altman ouster and then rehiring.
That's what it was, exactly. And again, in one of the Hard Fork episodes, they explained that how some of the board members of OpenAI had concerns about that it's going too rapidly, or is it going to solve the world hunger, or no, Sam Altman is really talking about the dangers of AI. So all possible conspiracy theories. You will never know what happened in the closed boardroom, but the phenomena is real, and EAC, in short, let's call it that way. I think people are really having parties around it now, and Silicon Valley is where these things start anyway.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, okay, do you mind if I share my screen and we can try running some code?
Yeah.
demo deities permitting. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
I have brought up your screen up here. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so we're gonna build an app. We have to get started. So obviously, we're gonna do what I always do. Poor Arun. You've seen this demo. You, poor guy. You've seen this demo, I think, entirely too many times. You probably know
Oh, I
the words.
mean, these are hallway conversations, right? You and I have had
Yeah,
this conversation multiple times in a hallway,
we
but
always show
this
each other
webinar
stuff.
is a way to bring it out to a wider audience.
Okay. So we're gonna go to start.spring. This is my second favorite place on the internet. Obviously, my first favorite place is production. I love production. You should love production. Should go as early and often as possible. Bring the kids, bring the family. The weather's amazing. It's the happiest place on earth. It is better than Disneyland. But if you haven't been to production, you can begin your journey here at start.spring.io. We're going to build a new application. We're going to use the latest and greatest 3.2.0. I'm going to use Maven. You can use Gradle. That works just fine as well. Kotlin, Groovy, Java, all those are great choices. I'm going to call it Beautiful. That's the name of the service. And I'm going to call the service. And the reason I'm going to call it service is because I'm just really great with names. I get that from my father. My father, when I was a small boy, we took in a small white dog, and my father, he named it White Dog. Now that dog was with us for like 10 years, and then he disappeared, and maybe he got a job. I don't know, but either way, he's great with names, and I get that from him. So I'm going to call my service. And then I'm going to use Java 21. And we're going to talk about Java 21 briefly during this demo, because I do think it's worth reminding people that there is only one true version of Java, and everything else is just irrelevant. I cannot imagine a world without being on Java 21.
So we are using Java 21, but people could run this on 14, 17, and other versions.
No. We care about the community, so we insist on Java 17 or later. But I am personally insisting you go to Java 21 or later, right? Because there's free money, right? We'll talk about it. We'll see in a minute. There's some features in Java 21 that make it, in my estimation, my humble opinion, as somebody who knows less than nothing, this is the single most important release of Java, and not just because of the most recent, the recency of it. It is the single most important release of Java, arguably since 1.0. And we'll talk about why. And it makes it just an amazing fit with what we're trying to do here. So we're going to use GraalVM. We're going to create a web app. We're going to create, I don't know, what are we going to do? We're going to have a JDBC here, right, for database access. You could use whatever. I'm going to use Postgres because remember we talked earlier about we need a SQL database. Well, we need a vector database. Well, it turns out our old friend Postgres has just such an implementation, and so it's called the PG Vector Store. You can use any number. I think Neo4j has a vector store. There's a whole ecosystem, a burgeoning ecosystem of new databases that have just come out of the woodworks in the last year or two or three to support the vector store use case. So watch that space. But for now, old friend.
I was at the Cassandra Summit a couple of days ago, and there it's an AI Dev Cassandra Summit together.
Nice.
And I was talking to some of the Cassandra maintainers, and they were talking all about how Cassandra has a vector database. So nice. I agree with your sentiment.
Yeah. So we actually have an in-memory one in Spring AI you can use as well. It's not production worthy, but it's great for tests. And you look at it, and there's definitely some chalk on the board math involved in one of these, but it is just math. It is just a very, very, it feels like it could almost be at home in the Java math package, or math class rather. Okay, so we got our bits here. Now you notice that I have not added AI because we don't have that on the initializer yet, because it is early days yet. We're not even at a 1.0. We're actually at a 8.80 snapshots, and even that's heavily going to change. So conceptually, what you're about to see will be the same, but things might not compile in a month or two. It's fine, because we're moving full steam ahead to a better, finer, more refined revision. Okay, so I'm going to hit generate, and we're going to open this up in our IDE. I have a little script here called UAO, unzip and open it. It's using Python, so there, it's an AI talk, and you were expecting some Python there. You've seen it. That Python script shells out, and it runs unzip and open, and opens up the zip file.
And this is in IntelliJ.
No, that's just a little script right here. I just ran.
No, but it opens up the app in IntelliJ.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it does. But it is a Python program, and there's AI.
Well, it's AI, right? It's got to be Python.
Exactly.
It's just like, if it's containers, it's got to be Go.
Exactly. Well, not anymore. We're going to talk about that too. Okay. So I've got this. So by the way, I'm using, speaking of Java, I'm using the GraalVM, GraalVM is another one of those examples of Java's amazing success, right? There's GraalVM, and then there's GraalVM's the distributions of GraalVM. GraalVM is a distribution of Java, and then GraalVM itself has distributions. I'm using this one, right? I'm using the Liberica's GraalVM distribution because it supports Java aught, our old friend aught, for GraalVM native images, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But
Wow.
it's there, yeah.
And it shows, as a developer advocate, you got so many different SDKs installed, and you can pick and choose. And this is using SDK man, I believe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look at Java. Tell me it's not open. Look at this. We have this is
That's
just
beautiful.
We're spoiled for distributions and choice.
And this is the ecosystem that a lot of other languages are jealous of, because there's something very unique to Java in terms of the thriving ecosystem, thriving downstream distros and vendors that are available. So customers have a choice, and that's what we talked about being open means.
Right. And by the way, weren't you at Amazon for a while? There's
I helped launch the Amazon Corretto, actually. So I remember taking James Gosling to DevOps Belgium. He coming out on the stage, and I am the father of Java. He opens up his Corretto shirt. That was pretty cool.
That is so cool. And I saw a Dynatrace thing the other week or month or year, or this year, but I don't remember when. Okay, saying that Corretto is now the most widely used JDK or JRE rather. So
is that so? Wow.
I think it was a Dynatrace report or something like that. Somebody could correct me. I'm happy to be wrong.
I'm surprised, because if you think about the cloud provider size-wise,
right,
AWS is what you are using, and if Corretto is the default JDK, I wouldn't be surprised. It is a damn good product, and the speed with which they move with patches and fixes and all is pretty amazing. So yeah, in that sense, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Spring AI version.
Actually, a point here. Deshaun is saying, I'm pretty sure that I have more JDKs installed than that.
Oh yeah, I keep pruning them because I have old ones and snapshot builds of them, but you can install them manually.
Yeah. Thank you, Deshaun, for that wonderful comment. Yeah, keep those comments coming.
Okay, so we got JDBC, Web, Postgres, test support, but I need to add the bits from Spring AI. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste off to the side. I've got a little iPad that I'm going to use, right, to cheat my way through this demo so we can get through it quicker, because I don't remember all the dependencies. They haven't put out the starters that I crave just yet.
So talk to us. What does this Spring AI bring for us?
Well, it brings support for it. It brings a client that you can use to talk to a number of different LLMs, right? So it's a portable strategy and abstraction there. It brings tools for refining the data and storing it in vector stores, and then talking to the vector stores. And eventually it'll start bringing more tools for things like I described earlier, like summarization, so that you can compact data in, you can keep refining data until the point where it fits in a context, it's just everything you need to talk, everything in the pipeline up until the point you're talking to the LLM.
And it does that in a very Spring way, because it's part of the Spring library.
Yeah.
Got
it. So we've got the dependencies here. We're not we got the Spring Boot started for OpenAI. Okay. We've got the Spring AI PDF document reader. We've got the Spring AI PG vector store client, right? The vector store implementation for that. So that brings us to the next question, which is,
this PDF document reader is something that you could use potentially for digging into PDF, grabbing the data, storing it as an embeddable in the PG vector store.
100%. I could not have said it better if I had tried. Hey, you know what I just realized? Oh, okay, never mind. No, good. Okay, yeah, it's PDF document reader. That's actually why we need the aught support. Remember that? Because it's going to use the Swing graphics library.
Got it.
It's using Apache Tika, which in turn uses the Swing graphics libraries to manipulate PDF documents, right? So that'll fail in a native image context unless we have Liberica. Maybe it'll work in GraalVM. I just haven't gotten it to work there. Okay, so good. So we've got that.
So one more comment from Deshaun, and let me flash it here. It says, I've been saying Spring AI gives me the flexibility to switch between models like Spring Data does for different databases.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly. Okay. So we have a speaking of databases, great segue. We do need to actually have a database, and we do need to have a connection to Spring, to OpenAI. So I've got this property file here. It's expecting me. So OpenAI. Let me re-import this. Maven reload. Here we go. Command Shift I for those of you who are smart and fast. Okay, there. So it's expecting a key. And well, obviously I'm not going to leak my credential here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little thing that will load up a shell context with the environment variable loaded from my password manager. All that to say, bear with me while I restart my code. So cd service, copying this little thing here called envrc, talk.envrc. I'm going to copy that here. It's going to, there you go. So now you can see I've got an environment variable stored in the shell, and with that there, I can now open up the idea project once more, and I can reference that environment variable, and it'll see the variable, right? It's a secure way of loading.
So it's basically taking that environment variable, making it available as this environment in the Spring application.
Exactly. That it's available. Yeah, exactly. Now I can run this program and have it talk to that. So that's part one. Part two is I need some beans, right? Some actual beans to do my work. So beans are Spring's way of wiring up objects for dependency injection. Okay, so I'm going to create a vector store. It's speaking of embedding client. We talked about that. Embedding client, EC, JDBC template, our old friend. We need that. Okay, we need, what else do we need? We need, I guess that's it. So I'm going to put this together, and my hope is that this stuff becomes more automatic in the future. But for now, we're just, it's again, early days. It is still easier than doing it by hand. That's for darn sure. Okay, there's this vector store retriever. Okay, that's retriever, and we're going to use a new vector store retriever, passing in the vector store implementation. We're going to just wire these things up, right? So they one depends on the other, so we're injecting them. And we're going to provide some values here for the value for K and the threshold, which is 0.75 here. Okay, good. And then
a threshold value.
Sorry?
What is the threshold value for?
I don't know. Let's see. Vector store it's a threshold. I don't know. It's this. It's what it's using in this crazy thing here. Search query with similarity threshold. There you go. Similarity threshold, whatever that means.
Okay.
I don't know. It is all just the important bit is, and I think you'll agree, it works. As long as that's true, I don't care. Okay, so Boolean, keep separator. No, thank you. I don't care about separators. I'm all about joiners. So here we go. So there's that. We've got now our infrastructure, middleware, code that we need to talk to the thing. But that brings us to the next question. Where is the thing, right? And for that, we need a container. You are, of course, a Docker captain. Is that like an ongoing thing? But you were at one point.
I believe so, yeah. You just had a good discussion with Docker a couple of weeks ago. Seems like they like me still.
I can't blame them. I cannot blame them. So is this the right one? No, that's not the right one. So copy desktop. Here's my, and by the way, this code, friends, github.com is it's I don't know, it's in here somewhere. It's Beautiful Cloud Native AI demo under Josh Long. Just look for that long-winded thing, okay? So I'm going to copy that. Now I've got a Docker Compose file. Love Docker Compose. I'm going to use it to stand up a Postgres implementation with PG Vector installed, okay? And it also has PG admin, but who cares? So Docker PS, okay, Docker Compose up. Here we go. So again, I'm now talking to OpenAI, but I've got a database that I'm going to use in between. It's going to act as my go-between between the rest of the world and my my LLM. In this case, OpenAI, but there are many implementations of LLMs.
So now walk me through the part where did we, so like just by specifying the OpenAI key is sufficient for us to talk to the OpenAI?
Yes, it's for this is the module. There's also Hugging Face and Olama and Azure AI, and there's more coming all the time, right? But this is the module we've chosen to use because it's the most common. This is a configuration property. We're telling it to inject the environment variable and use that to configure a default AI client. That's the abstraction that we have. And the abstraction is pretty simple. It's just generate and a string prompt, right? Like I said. What else do we need? Well, we have this Docker Compose instance. We're going to set up user password Postgres. Shh, it's a secret, okay? This is my credentials. Don't tell anybody. We're going to use the database vector store, and we're going to use Postgres. So we're going to say Spring data source password equals Postgres, right? And then username Postgres. Obviously, you would also put these in environment variables or in a Kubernetes secret or something. Don't just put them in the source code like this. This is a terrible idea. URL JDBC Postgres QL localhost, and the one little bit. Look, I made it more fun. I changed the name of the database there. Okay, good. So now we've got that. Now we can actually start writing our code. So let's just try the simplest possible thing that could possibly work. We're just going to create a Java app that talks to the AI and does something, innocuous. Just print out hello world or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
So I guess we can do that here. Let's just do that this is when I define these methods here, for those of you who don't know this stuff, I'm defining a method that tells Spring, hey, I have an object of type application runner or of type token text splitter, and its definition is here. And so if anybody else asks for a definition of this type in the parameters of their method, then Spring will resolve it by it says, oh, this has the same type as that, therefore
it'll inject it.
Yeah, I'll inject it, right? Okay, so and then this callback interface, application runner, is just a chance for me to ask questions, and when the program starts up, I get a callback. That's all. So now, first things first, simple as we can get. Singularity, I'm injecting that right there. Singularity.
The AI client, as you explained just a minute ago, is going to be, because we specified that property in the properties file,
Exactly.
is plugged into OpenAI.
Yep, we can now inject an implementation of this interface, which is very stark. You can see the basic one is AI response with a prompt. We can inject this implementation, of which there are many for different LLMs, right? We can inject the implementation for OpenAI, and also those properties. I didn't really go to town or anything like that, but Spring AI, you can specify all sorts of stuff without actually writing Java code about OpenAI, the base URL, the model that you want to use. Like I'm using
and that's the whole value proposition of Spring. It's all declarative without writing template code.
Exactly, not wasting it. But you and I are both big fans of not wasting our time. Okay, so we're going to generate. So what do you say? Let's tell me a story about the I don't know, wonderful. What do we ask? Oh, tell me a story about the wonderful people of Silicon Valley, and do it in the style of. Oh, see that? We got a problem. Look at that. I'm running off the screen. You know what we can do now? Because we have Java and Java's awesome. Multi-line strings. Look at that. Another thing. So here we go. Get rid of that. So now, tell me a story about the wonderful people of Silicon Valley, and do it in the style of famed children's author, Dr. Seuss. Another one of my favorite doctors, along with Dr. Strange, awesome. Dr. Caboose, Dr. Subramaniam, etc. Okay, so there's the result. Response. Okay, this is the simplest thing we can possibly do to.
Beautiful.
Okay.
This is a very hard-coded question and a hard-coded response. One question, one response.
Yep.
Dump it out.
Proof of connectivity. That's all we're trying to do here. Make it. Yeah. So it's thinking, presumably. I sure hope so. There we go. Okay. Whew.
Oh, so let's take a look at the story.
Yeah. So it took a little while. That's the thing. The program started up real quick, but once upon a time in a land oh so sunny lived the wonderful people of Silicon Valley. How funny. They tinkered and toiled day and night, creating incredible things with all their might. By the way, speaking of sunny, the sun just came out and it's reflecting off of the building diametric opposite my skyscraper.
It's beautiful, actually. Yeah.
But I'm like, so if I look like I'm Two-Face, with
you look awesome, Josh, as always. So now in this case, you made a request. It was gathering all the response, and then it dumped it out one shot.
Yeah.
How do we stream the response as it's thinking and getting the response back?
Well, you can do that. So you can ask for it. So what I get, let me see, singularity dot generate. If I passed in a prompt, I'm going to look at that in a second. If I passed in a prompt, then I can get the generations, the list, right? And so you can't stream it out in this example, but you can get the list and see the individual lines that it generated after the fact. And they are working on reworking some of this to support streaming, I think, as well. I saw some reactive stuff in there the other day. But okay, by the way, one of the things we just noticed, friend, is I just made this request, and I'm sitting here, you and I were sitting there like I drank some coffee. I think we told each other a little story about that time we were at a conference. The audience saw that you and I were just plainly just sitting there doing nothing for like 1,000 years, right? Waiting for this text to arrive. And during that time, you and I had each other to keep each other company. But the Java program itself, what happened to that Java program, right? This Java program was sitting there waiting for the response to come back, and nothing was happening on this thread. We're on a thread right here, probably the main thread, but we're still on a thread, and nothing is happening. And so we don't want to sit on that thread if we're just waiting, right? That's a waste of thread. Threads are expensive. But
Right.
now in Spring Boot, in Java 21, they have Project Loom. So if you want to take advantage of that, just enable this. And now all your I/O over the network and things like that, if the runtime sees you're doing something blocking like thread.sleep or input stream.read, it moves the code off of the thread, puts it in a RAM buffer, monitors the thing that's waiting. And as soon as the thing is done waiting for whatever it is, if it's a minute later or a second later or whatever, it puts it back on the thread. So you can start the program on thread 1 and then do a input stream.read to a network service, and then when you put a breakpoint on after that thing, you'll see you're actually on a different thread, and it just happens automatically. So now you got really good scale for free. Just upgrade to Java 21. But okay, I can see
that's why you were talking about that. Use Java 21 because
Absolutely.
of Loom capability of being able to do multi-threading very easily.
Huge, and I cannot believe the Java team did this. They never cease to surprise. They are amazing. This is a huge win. Free scale. You're losing money by not using it. If you hate money, don't upgrade. If you do like money and you want to like consolidate some of your infrastructure, absolutely you should be upgrading yesterday.
So Josh, I mean, if we were to kind of bring it back for a second, in like for the first 10 minutes, we were just gossiping mostly.
Sure.
In the 20 minutes or so, we were able to build an application in cloud native Spring Boot that is now talking to OpenAI, craft out a quick question and a response and generate all of that in 20 minutes. That's all it took. And that is with all the explanation.
Right. Do we have some more time? I have to show you one more thing.
We have 30 more minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to show you 2 more things then. Because this is useful in of itself, because you can already imagine, like, okay, I've got an app. Somebody's writing a blog. Okay, give them a little thing to like ask the AI to give them the blog. Here, help me fix it up or whatever, Already that's useful. You can get like Grammarly or something like that kind of experience for people in their new apps, already that's useful. But again, it gets most useful when the AI knows about your data. So imagine you're building an IVR or something like that, right? Where you're talking to some sort of customer in some sort of customer service capacity. You want the LLM to know about your customer's data. And so this gets into the whole world of mining and processing and distilling the data so that it fits in the context of the prompt. Okay. So let's rethink this now. I'm going to, instead of just asking a question, which that's cheap, questions are interesting, but I want context as well. I'm gonna first of all I'm gonna reset my vector store because I'm gonna use the vector store. So let's create a method here. So static void reset, okay? And we're gonna use the vector store here, and we're gonna use the JDBC template or a client. Let's just use a template. Who cares? Okay, and throw as exception just in case. And here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say JDBC template dot execute delete from vector store. I'm going to reset this database on every single startup, which is not super efficient, but hey. And what does that give me? Does that give me the is it update? I'm not sure which one I need to use, update or execute. Probably execute, but whatever. We'll find out soon enough. That's part 1. And then I'm going to read some data in. Let's say I've got some sample data here. Okay, I've got a open source document about the state of Washington's Medicaid facts. Okay, this is from some just document on the internet. I don't really care.
Just a PDF.
Just a PDF. Okay.
And so if you think about bringing the context in, your context may be lying around in a wide variety of data formats. PDF being one of the most common ones.
Absolutely. And so you want to initialize the database, your vector store, full and stuff it full of data so that it can then answer questions usefully and inform your prompt. So normally these are 2 separate things. You wouldn't reset the vector database every single time you answer a question, but just because of our demo flow, I'm doing that. But you do one thing over there and then answer the questions with a fast, ready to use vector store over here. Okay, so I'm going to reset the vector store. Now I'm going to read that data in. Okay, so var config equals new PDF document reader config. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just don't tell anybody. Okay, everyone. I'm just going to copy and paste some code. You should never.
That's what we do, man. That's what we do. Keep it running.
That's how. You should never ever do this. Never. Not even when you're all by yourself at home and no one is looking. Don't copy and paste code. But
where did that come from? I'm surprised.
I wrote it. You didn't see it. It was very fast.
You typed really fast.
Yeah. Actually, that could be
Where is that vector underscore? You said delete from vector store. Where does that data type come from? The name of the table.
Oh, that's the PG vector store thing, and I'm just resetting the database there.
That was the name specified in the config file.
No, I think that's actually just part of the. Maybe it is actually. Maybe Yeah, that might be what it is. Yes.
Okay.
Say yes. I'm just realizing right now because I've just been using blindly. I've just been using the Docker Compose file. You're right. It's probably
Yeah,
specified.
it's specified in the config compose file. There you go. Okay.
Okay, you're right. That seems like there's probably a pattern there. Okay, so I'm going to delete that just to reset, which is again only for our demo. You wouldn't delete your data every time you have a transaction. And then I'm going to ingest a PDF. Now Spring has this handy abstraction called a resource, and it's just a thing that can give you a URL or an input stream or a file name, right? And you can check if it exists. But there are implementations of resources for URLs and file systems and class path and contexts and input streams and byte arrays and servlet context resources and VFS from, I think that's a JBoss thing, JBoss VFS and whatever. There's just, and then across the Spring ecosystem in MongoDB, there's GridFS, so you can get a GridFS resource and all that. So I'm going to just specify that as like, I need a thing that I'm going to then load into the database. Okay, I'm going to call this PDF resource. There we go. And then here's the vector store. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm saying, specify one of these, read this many pages, all that kind of stuff. Specify the document reader, specify a token text splitter, get the contents of the, let's see, where's my PDF resource? Here's my PDF resource, split it, and then we're going to accept it or write it into the vector store. That's vectorstore.accept, and we're giving it a list of documents, okay?
So what you're doing is you're cleaning up the vector store, you're reading the PDF document, you're using the token text splitter to say, hey, this is how the tokens are defined in the PDF document, and then dumping it into the vector store. Yep. And that's what you're going to use for your context to create your RAG.
You got it. You 100%. Perfect. Exactly. And so that if that goes well, then the next line I can ask a question. Okay. So we've already seen that without context, you can already get useful things out of LLMs. No surprise. But now let's ask it a very specific question. And the reason I have this PDF is because it's October 11th, 2023. That's after any of the cutoff dates for any of the OpenAI LLM models, right?
Right.
So it wouldn't know about this content, right? That's the whole point.
Oh, so OpenAI was, I think the last training date I saw was January of 2023.
Right.
So this is October 11th. So if you ask information post-January, but before October, this PDF is the one that's going to provide you that context and make it more intelligent decision.
Perfect, exactly, and that's important because that's also going to be the case for your customer data and your data. Now, by the way, there's a whole question around whether you should send your data to OpenAI in particular, or if you should use a hosted on-prem model like Mixtral or something. That's a whole other discussion. But Spring will support you in whatever way we can.
But I think that's a very important point that customers may not feel very comfortable sending their data to OpenAI and getting the value back because you don't know, it's a closed AI system ultimately.
Right.
How they're going to use it, how they're going to train it. But so they want to do a RAG pipeline because then it's in their context and their control.
Right, exactly. And hopefully they clear out that session every time, Okay, so we've got the, let's see, I'm just defining these things so that I can inject them. I'm going to use Spring's @value annotation here to say that I want to pull in a file from the desktop PDFs, and then the file is called, what file is this called? This is PDFs desktop Medicaid WA facts, okay? So paste that in there. So Spring is going to automatically see that. It's going to make this resource point to that thing, and then I can then inject it and use it to initialize my database, my vector database, okay? So this is we should call that init or reset or whatever. I don't know, whatever you want. Okay?
Yeah.
Now we can ask it questions. And here we need to do a little bit of work, okay? So I'm going to create another class here called the AI, like you could call it chatbot or something like that, right? Here we go, @component. This is a Java class, and I'm just doing it for, I don't know, cleanliness. It just feels like it should be a separate class, but you could do whatever you wanted. Chat message, okay, pretty straightforward. And so in order to answer our questions, we need to stuff the prompt, and that's why we want to hide this in a separate implementation, okay? So I'm going to create a separate type there, package private, because why would I make it public unless it needs to be? And I'm going to give it a couple of things. I'm going to give it a template, right? I'm going to give it a templated prompt that it can then just change for every incantation, for every use, but it's basically the same template. And I'm going to inject the AI client and the vector store retriever, VSR, okay? And we want these to be private final string template. You know what I should have done, buddy? I should have just done this. I should have let the IDE do the work. So private blah blah blah, and then this private final this, and get rid of that. Okay, hit Alt Enter.
And now create the constructor. Bam.
So much nicer. I should have trusted the. By the way, AI. Like, if people ask why my code is so fast, you and I both know why we copied and pasted. But it could have been the new IntelliJ AI. It could have been Amazon Q AI. It could have been GitHub Copilot. All of which work in IntelliJ. So, and all of which like landed, well, except for Copilot, it all landed in the last like week.
Right.
The AI world's changing so quickly. Okay, so I'm going to chat now. Okay, so first things first, similar documents equals this.vsr dot retrieve. Okay, and the query, we're just going to pass in the message. We're going to say get similar documents. This is a collection of a list of documents, right? So list of similar documents. Okay, and now we get the documents themselves. We say similar documents dot stream dot map document get content dot what else? We're going to collect it into just a string. Basically, we're going to join this into one big string. Okay, and then once we've got that, want to create a system message, which is like the default prompt that governs everything else. So new system prompt template. Pass in this template there. That's the template that we've injected there. Okay, I'm going to create a message with that prompt in mind. So there's a whole pipeline here just around building a nice prompt and templating out and stuff. So you can just pass in a string, but if you want to have some templating support, it can be nice to do this instead. And then documents, passing in the documents there. Okay, and then user message equals new user message. So we've got two different kinds of messages. They're both messages, and we're going to use them both, but we want one to inform the other. So now we say new prompt, and we're going to pass in the collection of messages here, the system message first, and then the user message second. Okay, so we've got a prompt here. And then finally, we want to get the response. So var AI response equals AI client dot generate, passing in the prompt. So we passed in the prompt. It's loaded with messages. Those messages are in turn loaded with the actual string prompts. And we say AI response dot get generation dot get content, etc. Okay, now the question is, where is this string that I was just talking about? Where is this?
Where is it coming from? Yeah, exactly.
And so this, we're gonna hard code it. You probably load this in from a SQL file or a text file or something. But me, I am going to just type it in. And again, AI. That's what's happening here. Is AI, folks. I'm not copying and pasting. Okay, so there we go. It's just fast. Look at that. So I've got a very simple generic prompt, and this is the whole school of prompt engineering, right? Like so much of what we're doing these days is just learning how to tell the LLM what you want. Because if you're very specific, and this is where your degree is in English and or whatever language of choice you use, because of course OpenAI and other LLMs often know about other languages, right?
Right.
I'm learning Mandarin, and it's actually really, really good in Mandarin too. So, anyway, you're assisting with. So you have to be very specific. You have to use your communication skills here. It's no longer acceptable to just be isolated and antisocial, because you need to be social with the AI. And also, it doesn't hurt to be a little polite. Remember, the machines will remember this, and it's nice to be a little polite. I try and say thank you if I can. Just a little polite. Okay, so you're assisting with questions about services offered by Karina. Karina is a two-sided healthcare marketplace focusing on home care aids and their Medicaid in-home care clients, adults and children with developmental disabilities and low-income elderly population. Karina's mission is to build online tools to bring jobs to care workers so care workers can provide the best possible care for those who need it. Use the information from the documents section to provide accurate answers, but act as if you knew this information innately. If you're unsure, and this is very important, if you're unsure, simply say that you don't know. So basically, we're telling it just the basic gist of what it needs to kind of start with, and then it's going to read the documents. And we're saying, we want you to pretend like you got this data from your wealth of knowledge. Don't say things like, looking at what you sent me, I think it's this, right? Don't say that.
You have read the document, and then you know that you have read it.
Right.
But in this case, AI, the RAG pipeline, is going to read through the document and give it back to you.
Exactly. And also, If you don't know, and this is very important, just say nothing. And you can actually be very stricter. You can get, it's an API. It's just free form text, but you can actually ask it. You can say, hey, here's a JSON schema. I expect a response in terms of this schema, right? And so you can actually, machine format interop. You can actually get that out of the LLM if you're very specific, but that's another discussion. Okay, so
and that's where sort of the ethical and the responsible elements of AI come in.
right,
And you don't start spitting out an answer or a 404 or a 500 exception if you don't know. Gracefully handle it and
right,
say, I don't know, and move on.
yeah, exactly. So that's our chatbot. I think we need to define that bean, that object of that chatbot, right? Okay, and so I'm just actually it's probably already defined because I had the at component added. Yeah, this is
Right.
this or at bean. They're both the same. So now I can inject that chatbot. Okay, and I can ask it questions. I can say chat. Okay, so what do we want to ask it? What's a question? Who's on Karina? Okay, there you go. Oh, whoops. Who's on Karina? So if you look at the PDF, who's who on Karina?
Who's on Karina?
Yeah. Okay, so that's definitely not in the prompt, but it's also, and it is in the document, and the document is newer than the cutoff date for the last model. Okay, so system out response dot whatever. Okay, so response, or actually, you know what I like to do? I like to do, it's so easy now because Java is just so clean and concise. Just create a little map. Okay, let's try that, shall we? So it's going to reset the database, reload the database with all the documents that we're reading in with Apache Tika, and then I don't know how to format this. That's fine. Okay, whatever. Okay, so let's try it. Let's just run it. Here we go. And remember, it might take some time. That's okay. It's thinking, or it might fail. What did I do wrong?
File not found.
Oh, is it because it doesn't see that it's a file? Okay, so you can see the text splitter is splitting some stuff up into chunks. All right, it's doing some things. There you go.
Has been verified, and that's the information that is coming from the doc, basically.
Yeah, right here. Everyone in Karina has been verified by the state.
Literally just spit out that information as is. Yeah.
Right. So now we've got it's a toy, okay, obviously, but you get the possibilities here. Now, obviously, I care about production, right? You and I, like, one thing I've loved about your career, your arc, is you care about production as well. You worked in the Java ecosystem, and then you went straight on to like Kubernetes and containers and all that stuff. And so these days, obviously, that's super important. That's why Spring stands out, is because it's optimized not just for development aesthetics, but also for production. And so I want to turn this application into as efficient a binary as possible. And have you played with GraalVM, my friend?
A little bit. Actually, on the side note here, Marcus, who I did a webinar with last week on creating a chat GPT clone using LangChain4j.
Right.
He says hello, and so hello back to Marcus and to Deshaun as well.
Yeah, good to see you. So GraalVM is this really interesting technology from Oracle Labs. It's part of Oracle, right? And it's sort of adjacent to the Java team, and they're both doing amazing things. I'm a huge fan of both. And GraalVM provides a native image compiler. Okay, so the idea is that you can take your Java programs, analyze it, find things that are wasteful, throw them away, and retain only what's left, and then turn that into architecture and operating system specific native code. So Mac, Linux, and Windows specific binaries. If you're running in a Docker container on Linux, well, guess what? You're going to run a Linux native binary. So I want to create a native image, because right now this is fast, but remember, it's starting up, it's validating a connection with the LLM and all that, and also it's taking a fair bit of RAM, right? I didn't measure how much RAM it's taking, but the point is that also can be improved. So let's use GraalVM. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just use.
So now you're going to convert this into a native Docker image.
I'm not even going to bother with a Docker image. You can use build packs, that works automatically, but just a native binary.
Native binary, okay, like a Graal binary. Okay, got it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we're going to use this command right here. I remember what back on the initializer, way back in the beginning of our conversation, I chose GraalVM native image support.
Right.
All that contributed is this. It added the GraalVM plugin, which then allows us to do this. Okay. So I'm going to run the native plugin. And the problem, friend, and the reason I'm glad we're doing this together is because it does take a really long time for those compilations to finish, because it's doing an analysis of your code. It's finding all the code that your code is using, all the code that that is using, all the code that that is using, and so on down the line until it's got a graph of all the stuff that's actually being used. But it doesn't, and then it throws everything else away. So it's like a reachability graph. And this causes some issues because sometimes it's not deterministic, right? It can't see all the dynamic things you might do at runtime, and like for example, reflection, and it's going to throw away that metadata that supports reflection. But Spring has a whole component model and an engine that extends to compile time to allow you to provide or to fill in the gap for that. But that said, it does take a long time, and it's gotten to the point now where it's like I finally understand this infamous XKCD cartoon, right? We all love this cartoon so much. I love XKCD. It's the number one program excuse for legitimately slacking off. My code is compiling. The boss said, hey, get back to work. No, code's compiling. Okay, carry on. This was the C++ people, I thought. I didn't know it was also us Java people now. 2023 is a weird year, right? And so like it's gotten to the point where I get very bored. I just sit there waiting for the compilation to finish, and it just takes a long time. It's like Slack. It tries your patience, you know?
It reminds me of my college days when I was writing C++
Yeah.
code, and that's exactly, I would not really do sword fights, but yeah, I'm just going for a walk here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go make some coffee or take a walk or whatever. But so GraalVM is not nearly as bad as that. It's not like those horrible stories I heard about. Microsoft takes a day to build a new release of Windows or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is bad, and it's bad enough that I get bored. So bored, I start looking at XKCD because it's always a good source of entertainment. Or maybe I start humming game show songs or theme songs or elevator music. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great if everybody heard elevator music when they did these native compilations? So I went to Oracle and I said, hey, buddy, would you please play? I went to Oracle and the GraalVM. I said, please play elevator music during the native image compilation process. I said, I already hear music in my head while I do these sometimes long-running compilations. I just like everybody else to hear it too. Thanks in advance. And I got some great responses.
A lot of comments in there.
Oh, yeah. People are really, the community. We love our community. And our friend Andrew Din over at Red Hat, a distinguished engineer on the Red Hat Java team, OpenJDK project reviewer, Byteman project lead, and Graal developer. So clearly this was a good use of his time. He said, please, can you make it this elevator music? I'm not going to play that because it's music from the first Pierce Brosnan outing as James Bond in the 1990s was called GoldenEye. That spawned a video game on the Nintendo 64, which in turn had a soundtrack, and you can buy the soundtrack separate from the video game and separate from the game. And one of the tracks is actually this elevator music, and it's really good.
That's beautiful.
Somebody else said, I would add that using beeps, not only for native image, really helped me reduce development time, like a microwave. That's a great idea, right? Fabio Niephaus, he's another one of my favorite doctors. He's on the Oracle team on GraalVM. He's a doctor. He's a contributor to GraalVM. He says, thanks for the request, Josh. The problem with playing music during the compilation process is that it's just fixing the symptoms, and we've been and are still working on the cause, making GraalVM native images more efficient in terms of time.
That's a very mindful reply, actually.
But then he goes on, he says, but anyway, I have prototyped a -- Josh Long mode. So that's what this is. So basically, you run the native image compiler, right? You can see that right there, native image compiler, and it says music brought to you by Josh Long. It's a picture, but don't let that stop you from imagining music. Right? And then you're still wondering what's going on. You want something to look at because you're bored. So then it prints out that, right? And I think this is going to be like a really good.
Java community certainly knows how to have a lot of fun. I love it.
Meanwhile, our build has completed, and actually, yeah, it completed many minutes ago. That is awkward. It took 56 seconds. Go to the target service.
So I can imagine the purpose of having that elevator music playing for the 56 seconds.
Right.
Ding 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 ding.
Exactly. So now you can see the application starts up in like 0.4 seconds, and that's only because we've got so much stuff from the Apache Tika stuff. It's already running much more valuably, for me at least, the thing I care about, because it's a stateful web app. I don't care about startup time really. But in a normal Spring Boot app, if you're just talking to a SQL database and you got a web app and you got some observability and all that stuff, in my machine, that's less than a tenth of a second usually. But there's a lot of stuff related to the graphics subsystems that we're using for this AI for Apache Tika. But anyway, I want to measure the RAM. So I'm going to ask PS-O RSS. That's the resonant set size. And you can divide that by 1,000. It's measured in kilobytes. So it's 200 megs for the full graphics library to be built into that native code. Again, for a normal Spring application, that'll be under 150. A lot of times, if you're just if you're building a GraalVM native image for a Spring Boot application that's used as like a Kubernetes controller, those I often get them at like 50 megabytes of RAM. It's really, really good. So, okay, so there's the application. There's the response. Now you can deploy that to your cluster. It's super efficient. You're talking to the freaking Singularity. It's easy. You've got a pipeline to be able to refine and ingest and store and work with data. And of course, I didn't mention all the other things in the Spring ecosystem that will help make this even better. For example, if you're using Spring integration, it's a enterprise integration framework. You can automatically see when a new PDF is dropped into a folder or whatever, and then automatically kick off an action to respond by ingesting that. Or Spring Batch, if you have like a whole a directory with thousands of PDFs and you want to make sure you don't miss any of them and you don't fail the job, use Spring Batch to start the job and then keep going until it fails and then restart from the next row and so on. It's just, the sky's the limit, but I hope you are persuaded there's some possibilities here.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So like, if you think about it, in the last 45 minutes, we have built a simple app using Spring Boot, connecting Spring AI to the OpenAI backend.
Yeah.
Using a PG vector database, Postgres vector database.
Yep.
Doing a full-blown RAG pipeline over there.
Right.
And converted that into a Graal native image. We learn about the beautiful story behind the elevator music over there, the Josh Long mode, and showed how efficient the image could be.
And
the GraalVM image, then you can package it up in a container and take it into production. So full concept, ground zero to actually taking an app into production, the entire pipeline we saw.
Yeah, and that was it was Java being gloriously concise, 126 lines for everything I wrote, including the generated code from the start.spring.io, including this multi-line text prompt right here that was just obviously not typical of your production application. 126 lines to get that kind of functionality up and running and useful. And now it's production worthy. And we did it while telling jokes and having a discussion with each other.
So that's the important part. People will always remember the fun discussions as opposed to technical details are all right, but this is the fun part of it. Marcus makes a comment here. I'm going to flash it here. Because I've been running a Hilla app in production as a GraalVM image for months. RAM usage has been around 150 MB.
That's awesome. That's Hilla is built on Spring Boot. So it's a Vaadin technology that pairs with Spring Boot and JavaScript, building JavaScript stuff. Hey, Marcus is there. Yeah. Marcus actually just said, Josh and I worked together on that earlier this year. Yeah, we did. He came to my home and we wrote code together.
Beautiful. Josh, this has been a fantastic webinar, actually. Really enjoyed, really learning from your dynamic coding style. So that's fantastic.
I learned from you, my friend.
It's all together, my friend. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
Can I promote my YouTube channel?
Go for it.
Okay, youtube.com/@coffeesoftware, one word. Okay, it's not a great channel, but you're probably going to make worse mistakes this year, like statistically. So join me. There's like 150 something episodes or whatever, and it's I'm there all the time, and I love talking to people. And so I do these live streams all the time. Join me.
So, I would appreciate you drop a link because this is going to be available on LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere. So drop that link as a comment to the LinkedIn channel. That will hopefully get you more visibility. So absolutely.
How do I do that? Can I leave it in here? Oh, private.
Well, you can drop it. There is on the right side. There is a type a message. Do you see that?
I don't. Deshaun, would you mind pasting it so he can show it or something? Add source, or somebody would somebody mind just typing it in?
Let me get that for you. So it's youtube.com/@coffeesoftware,
just one word.
@coffeesoftware. Let me paste it. Oh no, I'm definitely not typing it right.
You and me, computers.
ATCOFFEESOF.
So it's just.
Oh, seems like somebody posted.
I just sent you a.
Oh, okay. So let me take that. Yeah, hold on 1 second.
There you go. Thanks, Deshaun, my friend.
Oh, at that symbol at.
I got it. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna flash that link here.
Thank you.
Have access to it.
And Arun, I know you're busy and all that, but we'd love to have you on the show. It couldn't be.
We'll do it. We'll absolutely do it. No, any day. This is a lovely thing to do it together. Absolutely. Josh, thank you so much. Such a fun engagement. and I really enjoyed talking about all the fun things that you're doing and how you're making like the cloud native life for developers easier and accessible, because AI is a phenomenon that is here to stay. We talked about EAC, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
in the beginning.
I'm all in.
Yeah, so people are believing into it. It is, has true value, and more important part is how do you embed that into your existing apps is the critical element.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend. All right.
Thank you, my friend.
Happy
Thanks.
holidays, and we'll see you some other time. Bye.